Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to the fourth consecutive day of Humanity Rising. Since we started last Friday night, for 2 hours every day between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m. Central European Time, we've been gathering to ponder the very important question about how we come together with increased strategic effectiveness so that we can actually make a difference in how we shape the post-pandemic world. Most of us are still in lockdown. We're undergoing one of the most momentous events in all of human history. This is the first time where virtually everyone, everywhere, has gone through the same experience and is therefore in the same conversation. That's unprecedented. And it provides us with the opportunity to do something we've never done before. And that is to come together in what we're calling radical collaboration. So Ubiquity University, as we were enduring and experiencing the pandemic like everyone else, we saw that most of the people were just hunkering down and trying to figure out how they were going to navigate their way through. And we thought, why don't we create a global commons? Since everybody's in the same conversation, let's have a conversation. And the nature of this conversation is, how do we transform these conversations into actions that can actually make a difference? So Humanity Rising is about dialogue, and every day, 7 days a week, as long as the pandemic unfolds and even beyond, we're going to make space for people to come together like we will today and dialogue about what they're experiencing, how they're trying to become more effective, what visions they have for the future, what solutions that they're implementing on the ground. A second level is around a marketplace of events so that all the nearly 300 organizations that have joined Humanity Rising in only the last 45 days can share their events, their projects, their workshops, their seminars, their books, any kind of product that they would like to get profiled, so that on a central global calendar, everybody can know virtually what everybody else is doing and participate as they can. And then thirdly, strategic formation. Can we come together as a progressive movement of people of goodwill everywhere, working for a better world? Can we come together around projects that would literally transform the world? One of the projects that was put forward on the Friday opening session was to plant 1 trillion trees. Think about that. If we planted 1 trillion trees, we would do more to ameliorate climate change, renew the ecology, stabilize the weather, and a host of other things than we could possibly imagine. So at the level of dialogue, at the level of radical collaboration and sharing, at the level of strategic formation, Humanity Rising has been designed and is now beginning to unfold day by day. And I think the final thing that I would say is that I went through a thought experiment while I was in lockdown, and I asked myself the question, if I was dictator for a day and I could make one decision, what would it be? And the answer that I came up with is that I would order that within the next 30 days, all executive leadership of every government and organization in the world, local, national, international, be turned over to women. If women were to lead between now and 2030, I guarantee you we would have the world that we would be proud of. So we thought that in this spirit, we would start on Friday night with a woman's circle. And then for the next 9 days till the 31st of May, we're going to be listening to the voices of women from around the world. And then we're going to have 7 days where we're going to be listening to the voices of youth from around the world. Because we take the position that as important in many ways as empowering women as a national security issue, not just because it's a good idea. The voices of youth, the people who are going to live into the future that we're creating, need to be heard in a very profound way. And then starting on around June 9th through the 19th of June, we're going to be delving for 10 days into the very important question of how we enhance our strategic effectiveness in a world that quite literally is spinning out of control. So that's the genesis of Humanity Rising. I want to welcome everyone to this session. I would like to now turn it over to one of the women who's going to be one of our speakers, Sabinije von Gaffke, who also, amongst many other things, is a professional moderator and host of events so that she can introduce the program. And she'll be working with HeatherAsh, Amara, who convened this women's group over the next 90 minutes or so. And then we'll close it out just before the end of the 2 hours. Thank you all so much. Sabinije, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jim, and I'm thrilled and honored to be part of Humanity Rising. And thank you once again, Jim, for your vote of confidence and opening up the space for me to be an enabler, a facilitator, a speaker, and a bridge builder to the conversations of Humanity Rising going forward. I really, truly feel deeply humbled to be part of such an amazing gathering and coming together of humans and leaders from around the world in this spirit of collaboration, co-creation, and inspired action, exploring the path of, this new world and new unified humanity. And also, as I mentioned yesterday, it really is time for global conversations that matter, that catalyze inspired action, that make a difference, and that navigate us in the direction of this new paradigm that is already here, and navigate us towards the regenerative world and earth and reintegrated and unified humanity. And on a personal level, I really want to express that I feel as though the work that I have done to date, both professionally and also my spiritual growth, has prepared and aligned me to be a voice and a facilitator of conversations and actions that are needed to make this quantum leap for humanity. And it's been beautiful and so wisdom-filled 3-4 days now already. Yesterday, we had a beautiful session that was based on 3 pillars: community, creativity, and spirituality, where 9 amazing and profound women leaders and navigators shared so much wisdom, so much insights on re-believing our world. And some of the sort of wisdom nuggets that I remembered are always to stay enchanted with life, with nature, with ourselves, with each other. To be enchanted, it's such a beautiful way to sort of reconnect and realign ourselves. And also someone mentioned curiosity to ourselves and service to others and the sereneness of silence. And in community, we find humanity, and that is our, way of coming back home. And always to remember that quintessence of beautifying the world, both around us and, the world as a whole, and to stay close to laughter, joy, and love. And I'm also so excited for today's topic that is around courage and compassion in collaboration, creating resilience, creativity, and diverse circles of change. Such a relevant and important topic. And I know that the 6 brilliant women and speakers and teachers who are joining this panel and circle of women truly have both wisdom, experience, and multidimensional tools and hands-on practices, how we can explore to sort of dream beyond what we know is possible while learning to gracefully navigate conflict and diverse viewpoints, which really is a skill and an art to do. And the convener of this session is an extraordinary woman and author herself, HeatherAsh Amara. She's also a leader, and she is dedicated to inspiring depth, creativity, joy by sharing the most potent tools from a variety of traditions. She was raised, a bit of a background, raised in Southeast Asia, traveled the world since childhood, and is continually inspired by the diversity and beauty of human expression and experience. And she really truly brings an open-hearted and inclusive worldview, which is so important to her writing and to her teaching. She's fluent in 4 languages, has a PhD in wisdom studies, and she has a fantastic global community named Warrior Goddesses that I imagine is sprung out from one of her bestseller books, The Warrior Goddess Way. She's also, I wanted to mention this, taught and taught with author Don Miguel Ruiz, who is the author of The 4 Agreements. And if you haven't read this book, I truly encourage you to read it. I have it on my bedside, and it is a beautiful reminder of the power of words and the power of the narrative that we choose to use and live by. And the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And I'm currently actually reading Heather and Don Miguel's book, The Art of Showing Up, which is truly profound. And it is a great gift and a great pleasure to have HeatherAsh Amara and her circle of 5 amazing women who will speak about courage and compassion in collaboration. So with that, I leave over the word and the sacred space to you, HeatherAsh.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everyone. So grateful to have you here. And thank you, as always, to Jim. So let's start by connecting ourselves wherever you are. So just take a moment and close your eyes. Now, I always like to start, put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, and just take a breath. And bringing yourself into this moment and this time, let everything else go. And think about something that you're grateful for. What are you grateful for in your life? And bring that feeling sense of gratitude even more fully into your being. So let go of what evoked the gratitude and just feel gratitude directly in your heart. And let's imagine that we can connect with each other from this place of gratitude, from this place of respect, and from this place of open-hearted curiosity as we explore how to navigate these times. Good. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and be present here. So today we're going to be exploring this idea of how do we create change in a way that we bring forward our courage, we bring forward our compassion, and that we're really also willing to work with diversity and with conflict, because we can't create real change unless we're willing to look at different points of view and let it be messy. So I am, as I was introduced, I'm the author of a book called Warrior Goddess Training. And those are 2 qualities that are something that we're going to be exploring today a little bit, but I want to use that as a framework for all of the panelists. And the idea is that we're learning how to bring not opposite qualities, but different spectrums together. So warrior energy is about focus, commitment, courage. It's that energy of, I'm going to do this. Nothing will get in my way. Jim is such a great manifestation of this. And that energy is incredibly important. And that energy can also get out of balance. So we can have an excess of warrior energy and we have a deficiency of warrior energy. What we have in our society right now, what we're seeing around the world, which has created the problems we're dealing with now, really is an excess of warrior energy, which is, I will do whatever I want to, I will force, I will push, I will override. And that's very linear energy. There's a place for it. So we're not saying warrior energy is bad, we need to throw it out. We need to realize when we have an excess of any energy, if we have an excess of warrior, we go out of balance. And we need to then come back to aligned warrior energy. There's also the goddess energy, and this is for men and for women, it's for all genders. Goddess energy is about curiosity, creativity, fluidity, opening to possibility. And the way I see it is that warrior energy is, I'm going here, nothing's going to get in my way. And the goddess energy is, I think I'll go here. Let's see, how can I bring as many of my beloveds together? How do we travel together? How do we bring creativity? How do we bring a sense of play? And that energy is also incredibly important. You can also go out of balance with the goddess energy. So you can go out of balance by being, one way of going out of balance is by being empowered victim. So the victim energy can be a deficiency of goddess. When we're not in that place of centered connection, we can feel victimized by the world. And you can also get into a place of being empowered, but still victimized. Okay. So we want to keep bringing ourselves back into right alignment so that we're opening. And we're not trying to be 50% warrior and 50% goddess. And it's part of why I brought this particular group of women together, is that to just share a wide variety of perspectives and experiences and expressions, because all of us are a mix of these energies. And there's not a right way for any of us to be. And I think this is really important for us in community, as we're building community, that as humans, our tendency is to want people to be like us, to want people to agree with us, to be on the same page with us. But really, when you do that, it's like monocropping. It's like creating one crop, and it's not sustainable in the long run. So what we're looking for is sustainability at this time with ourselves and in relationship to others. And a part of that is really doing our own individual work of how do we get grounded and present and centered in our path, in our spiritual path. And I think of this as we're learning how to be in right relationship with our mental being, with our emotional being, with our energetic being, and with our physical being. We can't do just one. And often, especially in the West, we've had a tendency to put all of our energy towards our mind and try and push away the emotion, try and, judge our physical body of how we think our physical body should be, not understand the importance of holding our energy body. And so as we come together in a circle, as we start to step out of the linear, how I see it is that we need the linear. That's an important piece of that. If I do this and this will happen. The linear is helpful for spreadsheets, for taxes, even people do a lot of creativity around that. And so there's particular things, computer coding, linear, helpful, okay? And we want to hold the linear in the circle, in the cyclical. So that's what we're coming back to. And I think this is what we need critically right now, is to come back in circles. And that circle starts with this circle of ourselves, holding the container of ourselves and calling in to heal, to to align, to integrate our mental, our emotional, our physical, and our energetic bodies. Okay, so to do that work, we'll be talking about this as we go on. And to also come back into connection with the cycles of nature. Cycles of nature, there's birth, there's death, there's beginnings, there's end, there's day, there's night. And it's not polarized of here's night and here's day, here's good and here's bad. That's how we get ourselves in trouble. It's a recognition that everything is part of the circle. And so how do we hold all of it? My belief is that if we're going to change, if we're going to use this pandemic and use it to help us change the paradigm that we're in, that we need to be starting right now with a couple of really important things. One is learning to be way more creative in how we see things, coming back into relationship with the circle. And part of that circle is being incredibly creative. And ways that we can be creative is reaching out and learning from other people that have creative ideas, and also learning how to be more creative. And I'll share a way to do that towards the end, this idea of creative intent. And that creativity is an obstacle arises. And instead of being upset that there's an obstacle or judging the obstacle or making the obstacle someone else's fault, that we go, all right, you are a worthy obstacle. And we use that obstacle to help us strengthen, to help us grow, to help us become more creative, to help us show up in the moment. And that's really what all of us are doing on this panel today. And I think Jim said all the panels are this way, is we're really just showing up. We didn't rehearse. We didn't decide what we each were going to do. We're here opening to the field of this time and this place, and opening to what wants to come through. How do we be creative in our response and our reaction in the most respectful way? And really how I see it, part of that creativity is learning how to shift fear into respect. Fear dampens our creativity. Fear makes us a suspect to being controlled by outside forces, or believing outside forces, or feeling like we need somebody else to tell us what to do. Respect allows us to look at something that's fearful, get really quiet, and open to what's needed here from a creative place. Respect allows us to name the obstacle, whatever it is, and open in creativity. The second piece that I feel like we also really need to learn how to do now is communicate with each other and with ourselves. So a lot of us have a terrible inner relationship with ourselves. We're incredibly judgmental. We're comparing ourselves to everyone all the time. We intellectualize rather than allow ourselves to feel and experience and open. And so learning how to communicate first with ourselves. How do we start to have a better relationship with ourselves? And I know we're talking about how do we change the global world. It really starts here, and it's both. So I don't want to say you have to do this first and then you can do that. I see it happening simultaneously. We're learning how to have better communication with ourselves so that we can improve our capacity to communicate externally as well. And that then also allows, when we're able to communicate with ourselves better, when we're able to be kind to ourselves, be compassionate to ourselves, name our fears, shift it into respect, we then also are able to hold more complexity. And in that complexity, we can hold conflict. But if we're not willing to learn how to hold complexity, how to settle in with ourselves, we're never going to be able to work on the outside complexity. And I see it as we're learning how to digest complexity to be more simple. Okay, I'm going to say that again because it's an interesting concept I've been really playing with. We want to learn how to digest complexity so that we can make it more simple. But you can't just simplify it. You have to go through the complexity. So I've been working really right now around race issues and around solidarity and around intersectionality, and inviting Native people into another summit that I'm doing. And it's been a couple of weeks of really intense complexity as I've learned to navigate. And I've been so grateful to learn how to hold. But it takes practice. We have to practice now. We need to start practicing now for these larger conversations that we're all going to be part of, I believe. So creativity, learning how to communicate with ourselves and with others in a clear way, and being able to digest complexity so we can be in relationship with a lot of different things simultaneously to create simplicity again, and to also be in relationship with conflict, to be able to stay stable and grounded and present when conflict is arising. So these are all things that we're going to be talking about and navigating. Everybody has their own expression of this. And so I'm so honored to introduce the panelists today. We're going to be starting with Serena Harris, and she is a social worker that is also I'm going to read I know you so well, community weaver. Oh, that's me. Kitchen witch. I love that. Community magic maker. And what I want to share about Serena is that she has a huge heart and incredible wisdom for one that's in a kind of youngest body. I've known her for a long time. So I knew her when I feel like she was a baby, and I've gotten to watch her grow and mature. And so I'm really honored and excited for all of you to get to hear from our first panelist, Serena Harris. Thanks, Serena.
Thank you, HeatherAsh. Thanks for the invitation to be here and to be in relationship with this conversation, because it's such a relevant topic. And when I think about being in this space and, you know, the questions that I'm faced with daily as I'm going through this work, how do I hold those complexities? One of the strongest pieces for me is leaning into daily prayer around what are my descendants currently praying to me about. So if I were sitting and imagining that in the realms that they are already in existence, what are they calling to me about right now? What are they knocking on my door and telling me, please make these decisions, please make these choices so that we can move through these struggles that they're feeling already. And I believe, you know, in my heart that there's this cellular thing happening through whatever realms exist. And that that in some ways, you know, I'm just listening to what are they asking for, or what's needed here. The same way that I'm praying to my ancestors regularly, because the times that we're in are not unique in that our ancestors have gone through times like this. We've made it through huge dramatic changes around the world before. And, you know, a few years ago, I started regularly praying to my ancestors, building altars to them and dropping into what's needed here. What's my work to do? What are the conversations I can have? And I started experiencing this huge amount of rage and within myself. And I was like, what is this? And I hadn't really experienced rage before. And so I was very curious as to what exactly was going on. And I remember going to one of my other teachers and basically saying, you know what? I'm feeling all this rage. I want to get rid of it. How do I get rid of it? I just want to like throw it in the river and have it, you know, go downstream. And I remember them asking me, well, how, like, when did the rage show up? And I said, well, shortly after, you know, I made this altar to my ancestors and I started talking to them about the times we're in. And they were like curious that you would pray for this thing, receive a gift of wisdom, and then want to throw it into the river because it became too much. And it wasn't the package you thought it was going to arrive in. And I really dropped in and I was like, this doesn't feel good. It feels really uncomfortable. And I don't want to think that I have this capacity within me to be rageful, to be so hurt because it was coming from this deep place of like pain. And I was just living each day trying to not explode on people, because conversations were happening and things like that. And I saw it resurface when COVID-19 started, and I would have these like bursts of rage come through. And I started to ask, how do I use this? Like, what are my ancestors trying to tell me? How did they use it? How is this a gift? And it took a while to really unpack. And HeatherAsh, I know we've worked a great deal on this, to really be able to hold that I can be loving and compassionate and also have rage inspire me to take action, to consider the complexities that exist, to ask hard questions. And one of the other huge pieces for this for me around this was having people in my support network who were willing to challenge my rage and ask me difficult questions, to ask me not to just be acting out, but to ask these deep inquiries of, okay, so what are you going to do? You're feeling this experience and you're having this. So what are you going to do with it? And also being very mindful not to dump on everyone around me in the process, because that is easy. It's easy for me to go into a rageful state and just start like screaming at everyone. And that's not helpful. And the way that I see it is that I spent so many years, and I go through cycles of this, of activism, where I mean, through my early 20s and probably part of my teen years, I had this time of my life where I was just angry at everything. And I just wanted the world to change. And I grew up in holding two worlds, because my mom was Thai, my dad's German, and to hold the complexities of being multiracial, and their experiences were very different. And just this place of how much complexity I was holding within myself, how much duality I was holding within myself. And there wasn't a manual, like there wasn't a way that someone told me how to navigate that. And so, and in a lot of ways, I was expected to be 100% one thing in one world and 100% something else in a different world. And so I think that those experiences then turned into suppressed rage. I mean, I just kept suppressing things, and eventually the gasket blew. And had it not been for the work that I've done and the teachers that I've had, I don't know that I really would have understood that. And obviously I didn't in the moment, that there was something that could be gained from this. I thought that there was something wrong with me. And I was both vilifying myself for having the rage and vilifying the outside world and everything around it. And there was this place where HeatherAsh, you invited me to drop into my vulnerability. Like, what did I feel scared about? Where was I? Like, what was happening? What was stirring? And I remember being really angry at the time that you were even asking the question. And I didn't know how to be vulnerable because it just felt like more rage would spill out. And what I found was that when I found people in my community that were willing to hold me in my rage, it created space for me to sift through it. It created space for me to be like, wow, this is really like yummy meat that can help me propel into this area. And this feels like it's decaying and it's actually sucking life force out of me. And so how do I hold both of those? And how do I allow it to be composted through me? How do I allow the earth to help hold it with me? Which was another big piece, was connecting to the earth and allowing myself to scream into it, to ask the mother to help me hold my rage and to help me use it as medicine instead of poison, instead of being toxic in my system. And there's this grace, I think, that happens with showing up and being vulnerable with the people in your community, the people who know all of the things about you and who we want to be in relationship with, and saying, hey, I want to share this thing that's really hard for me. I want to show up in the fullest expression of myself, and some of it is messy. Some of it might even be hurtful. And it's my perspective. It's where I'm struggling. And so can you help hold me in this? And to find those people, because it wasn't everyone, right? There was a core group of people that I knew if I went to them in a particular way and showed up with them, that they would meet me. And sometimes that looked like yelling at each other. And sometimes it looked like a gentle sitting and listening and allowing me to process and pull apart everything that was showing up. And I think that in these particular times, that's a way to get creative. That's a way to drop into our courage, is to have those hard emotions or heavy emotions, or the ones that we oftentimes are told to stow away, to pretend that we don't have them, to pretend like they don't exist, because they are, it is necessary for us to unpack it. It is necessary for us to process it. And we're going through, I'm seeing this a lot in my therapy practice. There's a collective trauma happening and collective upset. And there's so much anxiety and unknown and overwhelm that's happening. And what's coming to the surface, because we don't have our distractions that we typically have had, is that all of our unprocessed gunk is now coming up. And as it comes up, that's where I'm seeing more rage in my clients and in my friends, in my circles, in myself, where we're seeing people grabbing for things. Like, if I just grab to this thing and make it certain, I can get through this. And I mean, that's how I grabbed onto my rage. I was like, if I can just be rageful at everyone in my world and create this us versus them, then I can get through this. And it was this like 10-ton shield that if I just held onto it hard enough, it would protect me. And it's heavy, and these times can be heavy. And I think that there's this process of being able to step into our own fullness, our own complexity, and our own mystery, and get curious about, like, well, who's here? I know one of the things I've been working with individually with myself has been younger parts of myself showing up and watching me grab for things that I wanted when I was young. And my mom died last year, and I'm so grateful she's not here during this, because it would have been a lot. But I'm noticing the parts of myself that break open and heartache because she's not here, because I want my mom. I want my ancestors. I want to be held in this circle. And so how do I nurture and hold those parts of myself? How do I lean into my community when I'm struggling and open to them about the vulnerability I feel? And I know it's complicated, and not being able to be in close proximity with people, but there's a lot of ways that we found to create virtual and energetic communities that have really opened me to deepening into myself, into my community, and really build it in that way.
Thank you so much, Serena. So beautiful. Excellent. So next we're going to go to Makenna, and I just want to weave a little bit that what Serena is sharing is this capacity for us to learn how to hold ourselves and be in community. And that piece of vulnerability I want to come back to later as well. So it's so important. And our next panelist, Makenna Held, is coming to us from France, where she lives with her husband and her daughter. And Makenna is a professional status quo buster and unfettering mentor. She also owns La Peach, which is a Julia Child's ex-home in France. It's now Makenna's, and runs a cooking school through there, and many, many other things. And one of the things I love about Makenna, many, many things, is that she has a deep background in economics and in visioning, dreaming possibilities for the future. So thanks, Makenna, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
Hi, everyone. It's a beautiful day in the south of France, so it's strange to be indoors. But it was a little loud outside with the baby. She's still a little noisy. People keep saying this, of course, that this is such unprecedented times and it's such a wild new capacity we're building with each other, and this shared humanity we all have that is really coming to the surface, and how it's actually like bringing up all that gunk, as Serena said. And I think the attachments that we have to the notions of safety and to the notions of certainty are so hard, and they're so dense, and we have a deep desire to hold on to that denseness. We like to hold on to that certainty. And in my work, I always say that everything we do, we have to hold with the same strength and gentleness of holding a baby chick. You have to hold it well enough that it doesn't fall down out of your hands. It doesn't like kind of just hop on away and hurt itself. But you also can't squeeze it too hard, because they're very delicate, tiny little things that you can actually do a lot of harm to when you squeeze them. And so it's a notion like the current times we're in and the past times we're in and whatever we're going towards, we have to hold with that strength and grace and tenderness simultaneously. We can't actually like grasp the past as like with nostalgia. We can't grasp the present even that strongly, other than like being in it as much as possible. And we cannot project ourselves into the future that strongly, because we have to be able to hold the possibility and mystery of all the things. And that capacity for grace and strength can be really, really challenging to hold, because it is those two energies, right? And the thing about all the things that we're doing now, the visioning practices we're moving into, the fact that we're coming together to think about new and different ways of being is so crucial. And the fear that, I guess I don't want to call it fear, a concern I have as someone who looks at all these things is that we'll hold too tightly to possibilities and not also be very present with what is present right now. And we also can make all sorts of intentions and plans and dreams, and we should. And we need to actually make decisions of what will or will not happen. We can't only dream. We also have to take that dream, that desire, that thing that we're looking towards, and we can desire it all we want. We can intend it all we want. But until we decide it's going to happen and we do it, it doesn't come to fruition. So there's a lot of really rich and beautiful things that are happening around the world, the way people are coming together differently, the way that we're creating differently, the way we're thinking differently because we've been forced to. And that's beautiful, but we also have to decide to do things differently. We have to decide to acknowledge and move with that. And one of those decisions has to be willing, and not just willing to, but decide to relate to difference. I don't mean just diversity, yes, but also like that conflict in that face of difference. And we have to be able to hold our own beliefs, which we're entitled to, and our values, but we have to be able to hold them the same way, the baby bird, and different beliefs, ones that we find abhorrent and challenging, because creating that tension and moving in that way completely shuts down the capability to actually relate. Doesn't mean we have to be besties. I'm not saying you have to go skipping down the street and become best friends with the people that you differ from greatly. If anything that the pandemic has taught me is how wide my network was and how small who I actually feel deeply pulled to continue relating to on like a daily basis has narrowed significantly. because I've really thought about what is important and how does it affect me and is it worth it? And it's a decision to engage. So I'm making different decisions to engage differently. But that capacity to, again, not necessarily be best friends with something, but with someone, but to be in that relationship to difference, and the willingness to be there and to not take on the difference as right, but to be able to hold the difference as valid, even if it is morally really challenging for us to do. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight against those differences sometimes. And there are a lot of differences of opinions about the environment right now. Like, should we go back to normal? Should we change things? We have to be able to hold to the things that we value deeply and be able to hold someone else's difference without squashing it. Because when we squash that difference, we squash them. So this whole building of new societies and new ways of being and new ways of relating requires a lot of compassion. I see someone say love, and love for me is too strong, but I agree. I love the word compassion because you don't necessarily even have to like the person, but you can hold compassion for them. And you can hold all of that and be like, I see you. And I see you seeing me. And we don't have to be on the same page. That's that. That's all I wanted to say to start.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Makenna. It's perfect. Yeah, and it's so true. I wanted to say this in the intro, so I'm so glad you brought it up. And this is the beautiful thing about working in community, is that you can miss something and somebody else picks it up. So thank you. We can't just create community with the people that we like. We have to start building solidarity across the board, which means really settling into how do I honor differences, which is not easy. So, oh, I'm so sorry. I will definitely post Makenna's title and info. And next we're going to go to Adele Morales. And Adele, yay, is a transformational leadership guide. She has an MS in management and leadership. She's done a lot of work in the corporate world. And I've been always really inspired by Adele because she really lives her values. And she has such also capacity to bring really diverse points of view within corporations and elsewhere together so that people are excited to work towards things, whereas before they were fighting against each other. So thanks so much, Adele, for joining us.
Thanks, HeatherAsh. This is such a fun opportunity to get to share from my perspective and my experience in this world, not just with pandemic, but leading up to pandemic. It was very interesting if I go back and track where I've been. I've been in corporate America for about 25 years now. I actually just recently left. I'll tell more about that in a little bit. But I always found myself in the mid 90s, being taught to stand in that warrior energy. Everything had to be factual, everything had to be statistical, everything had to be very linear, as HeatherAsh was describing earlier. And so that, as I developed early in management, in my early 20s, I was managing people I was half their age and sometimes even more than that. And I found myself having to do everything from a very patriarchal position. And then as I grew into leadership and then into my own spirituality and who I really wanted to be in the world, I found myself saying this warrior energy really isn't serving. You know, when I lead people from this place, it creates angst and a lot of disagreement. And when I decided to step into more grace and more compassion, I saw a monumental shift. And in my leadership, I started to bring in practices like the 4 agreements and really nurturing the people for who they were and seeing them where they were. And I started to see a big shift. People really, there's that saying where people really, they don't care what you say, it's what you do and how you make them feel. And I found that to be true. It was about how I was making people feel. And suddenly when people felt seen, felt heard, they then wanted to team and partner with each other It wasn't always peaches and cream. Sometimes we had conflict, but they knew that we were willing to stay with that conflict until we found solutions. And that was really important. So that was where I started to see the shift from warrior to also the goddess, embracing people for who they are and embracing myself, because I found that in that warrior process, I had lost myself in a lot of ways. I wasn't self-nourishing. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't going into nature to really let nature heal me in the areas that I needed healing so that I could show up for corporate America and show up for the teams and show up in the decision making that I needed to make. And so that had become a big part of my life. But as I stepped into self-care and really nurturing myself spiritually, and I started to do work with HeatherAsh and the warrior goddess, and really learning what that warrior was, what that goddess was, and how I could peel away at the layers of the onion that I needed to heal within myself. I started to see that that was also where I was stepping into true leadership and authentic leadership. And then I was in a really horrible marriage over a decade ago, and I started to believe in myself and love myself enough to know that that's not where I wanted to be. So I became a single mom of 2 daughters who are now 18 and 15, and they too have stepped into their authenticity of warrior goddess balance, which is something that they've not only seen demonstrated, but a lot of the women around them are also demonstrating that and teaching them how to do that. Another important part of this whole practice is vulnerability. I find that being vulnerable in the workplace is something that people shy away from, but it's definitely necessary, and it's going to be needed going forward into these times to be able to build relationships and build trust that's needed for our society to bloom. And so there is a balance. There is a balance. We don't want to totally do away with the warrior. The warrior is needed, and so is the goddess. And there is a place for both in the workplace and in corporate America. And a lot of people are anti-corporate, and I get it. But the reality is that you're just not going to eliminate the corporate arena, or the a lot of the industries that are out there aren't going to go away overnight. So it is better to find a way to work together and bring in vulnerability. One shift I have seen that I do appreciate is the teachings of emotional intelligence in the corporate place. And those have helped bring to surface some of the things that are needed. But truly what I find is those leaders who go within and really are self-aware and can give themselves the self-love that they need, and they come to accept themselves. And what that self-acceptance does is it helps those leaders see through the eyes of compassion and grace when they're, working with the other people around them. And compassion and grace in such a place where there's tendency to have such judgments and such sometimes corruption is helpful. And I'll share my experience. I mentioned that I left corporate America about 6 months ago, and one of the things that I found myself in was I was in an area where there was not much diversity, and many times I was the only brown woman in a room in a high leadership position that was very visible. So not having the mentors around me could make things difficult for me, and at times, even though I tried to ignore it, I was being asked to be someone I wasn't at times. And it was going against my true authenticity and not feeling seen, not feeling heard. And what I realized was, we need more workplace shamans. And the workplace shaman is really someone who's going to bring in the 4 agreements, somebody who's going to lead from a place of vulnerability, somebody who's going to nurture and give grace to other people. I really love that we can now start exploring that and looking to see how we can build leaders who are willing to go to the depths and really clean out their stuff, and also nurture others to do the same and help them through it. And so I think it will build better work environments for many people, more diverse work environments. And more communications, to be kind to yourself, to be kind to others, because overall humanity is needed in the workplace. And that's one of my visions and desires for where we're headed post-pandemic. I was really somewhat excited, even though during the pandemic, the emotions have been a big roller coaster. But during the pandemic, when it started, I found myself in fear. And then I thought, wait, where's this fear going? And one of the things that came up within me was something HeatherAsh has taught me over the years, is to get comfortable with the discomfort of knowing. And once I stepped into that, what do I not know? Well, I don't know. None of us know anything. But what I am excited about is that we get to create something new, something better, something that includes all of humanity. And that we really have a huge opportunity, and shame on us if we don't step into that opportunity. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you, HeatherAsh.
Thanks, Adele. Beautiful. Yeah, more insights around bringing that kindness into the workplace, and how do we empower more leaders within the workplace and but within even the large corporations, to bring that kindness, to bring the mindfulness. It's all part of it. Good. So our next panelist is Sarika Jane. And Sarika Jane is a mother, a wife, and love and relationship coach. She has an MBA. And I met Sarika, years ago in New York, where she's from. And I've just always been so inspired by her willingness to ask hard questions of herself and of the communities that she's in, her willingness to also go for her own inner work. So this is Sarika in a nutshell. Were you 11 months pregnant? And she goes on a mindfulness, a 10-day Vipassana retreat, 11 months pregnant. I was like, yep, that's Sarika. She's going in. Yeah. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, HeatherAsh, and thank you, Jim, for convening this amazing conference together. I've been, just so inspired by you, HeatherAsh, over the years, and something that's been coming up for me is the idea of the love goddess. So there's warrior and then there's goddess, but I think of the goddess as a love goddess. And, as we're entering this new phase where we're all kind of hunkered down at home, I've been looking at my own community around me, and it's not, although I am part of different communities, I'm finding that nurturing my own community at home has become like my daily practice. So my 2-year-old or my 3-year-old daughter, my 6-month-old, my husband, my in-laws who we're here with now, the land that I'm on, the Lenni Lenape that used to live on this land, the trees, the birds. And it's just amazing to me that right within my own, my own little world, there's all of these connections that I have, this community that I have of diverse perspectives and experiences that, that if we can create a healing kind of environment for all of us in this little micro community, and then kind of have it, ripple out, what would be created, because something that has been heartbreaking for me has been kind of like the destruction of our social fabric over time, to the point where a lot of people don't even feel that they have a nourishing home to go to within their bodies, within their homes, within their families. And so I think the work of the love goddess, the warrior right now, is about, bringing healing and love within our own communities, whatever that looks like, and then having it slowly start to ripple out. One thing I was looking at is the David Hawkins pyramid of emotions. And apparently, 50% of the world is living under the emotion of pride. So pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, those are all emotions that are that kind of bring us down as humans, as a society. And so the work to actually go into the higher feelings like love, joy, peace, enlightenment, that requires us to open up our hearts. And I really feel like love and our intimate relationships is the place to start for opening up our hearts. And it takes courage. So courage is kind of that leaping point from which you can actually start taking those, taking those steps towards love, towards joy, towards intimacy with your loved ones. It is interesting to me that, we're all at home and we're getting a chance to heal our root chakra, our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with our parents, siblings, with our community, and also that we're also going through this global heartbreak. And to me, that's an interesting thing too, because it is through heartbreak that we are able to go to love. Sometimes you do need to feel extreme grief, extreme rage, pain, despair, and then kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel and reach into grace and vulnerability and surrender. And so, these times I think are really powerful for us as a humanity to bring in more healing in terms of our intimate relationships. And I think about it with my husband, right? We're so fortunate to have each other, but these times have actually brought up huge arguments over like who takes care of the children, and he's working and I'm doing this, and I know that every couple is struggling with that right now, and there's a huge gender war that has been going on for millennia, and that's bubbling up right now too. And so we have this opportunity right now to like, for instance, I'm looking at myself and my husband, we have this opportunity to heal that within ourselves, within our marriage, and and hopefully create a new template for what the sacred feminine and the divine masculine looks like in a relationship, and so and passing that on to our children. And hopefully, through the work that I do or through the communities that I serve, we're able to serve from this place of the masculine and the feminine coming together. So those are some things that I've been thinking about.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Sarika. Yeah, again, and just that really important piece that we need to be working on multiple layers, and that all of us are called in different ways. And so I want to really honor the people that are called, and it's so important, people that are in partnership, to work on the partnership, to not go, oh, I have to go save the world over here. It's like, that's saving the world as well. And that we have to really understand that the actions that we're taking in our intimate circles, as well as in the world, need to go together. So thank you, Sarika. And then our final panelist, and then after our final panelist, we're going to open it up and we're just going to share thoughts on each other, and we're going to open it up for questions as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to share. I've seen some go by and I've been writing notes down. So Ashe Syed is the founder of Dance of Oneness. I have heard about her for so many years from Jim and Will, and we've been in similar communities that have overlapped. And so it's been a really great honor and delicious celebration to get to meet her virtually and to get to collaborate with her in this way. So thank you so much, sweetheart, for joining us. So grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much, HeatherAsh, and thank you so much to all the women who've shared already. I resonate with all of you. Thank you to Jim and the Humanity Rising Initiative. I'm connecting with you here today from Topanga, California, the land of the Tongva people, with blessings and reverence to them and reverence to the land, to the earth. I am speaking also from the voice of women in the Middle East. Iran is where I'm from. And also the voice of those whose mode of communication is movement and music, stillness and silence. And I'm going to let my words come from that place, which is my primary way of communicating. I communicate through dance. I communicate through stillness and silence. But I'm very inspired about what HeatherAsh has asked us to share about, and that's where the warrior and the goddess come together. And what's moving in me right now is the warrior in us is being asked to ask the hard questions of what has brought us here? What brought us to this moment? How have we all contributed to the unsustainable way we've lived? How we've been arrogant and ignorant, controlling and exercising dominion over the natural world. How have each of us, even if we don't really believe in those methods, have contributed to that way of existence, placing money and economic development over the protection of the environment, and how we've been exercising control instead of collaborating and living in coexistence. And it's interesting that this little virus, this tiny virus, has brought our perfectly executed world to a halt. And it shows us how frail we are and who is really in control. Mother Earth is showing us actually very tenderly how she is in control, reminding us of our frailty. And so the warrior in us, the warrior in me, is asking those questions of how have I been greedy? How has my hyper-individuality, our hyper-individuality, and the need to possess the earth and say, this is my land, and using and abusing the excessive consumption of goods way beyond our needs, that has been very destructive and continues to be destructive to the natural world. And this control that we've exercised over the natural world includes our own nature, the way that we've been relating to the body. You know, my work is dance, and embodiment is primarily what I'm dedicated to help people, to help all of us embody ourselves. And I feel that the way we've been disconnected from nature is also reflected in the way we're disconnected from our bodies. And the separation that we've had from nature, the separation has also led to us being disconnected from our bodies and not living our bodies as the home of the divine. The body is the house of God, is the inscription in the internal temple of Luxor in Egypt. The body is the house of God. How much do we really experience that? So this disconnect from nature and disconnect from our bodies is also reflected in the disconnect from the sacredness of life, living life as sacred. And I feel that what is happening now with the pandemic and this, what you were talking about, HeatherAsh, about holding complexity, I feel that this conflict is now showing us how, this pandemic is showing us how conflict can be an ally and how we can awaken the goddess energy, which I'm seeing more as the compassionate energy. So the warrior and the goddess in us are operating together, the warrior asking the hard questions of how have I contributed to what we are living now? How has our collective contributed to it? And then the goddess energy, the compassionate energy, embracing and saying, just like Mother Earth, that you have a chance, you have a choice to choose the connection, the collaboration, the community, to choose love, and to bring together the harmony between the body, mind, heart, and soul, to bring back the connection of matter and spirit, and to see that matter is actually ensouled spirit. Matter is no different than spirit, that it's just it's congealed spirit. And I feel that one of the gifts of the current situation is that we've been so overdriven and so doing oriented, and now we've been forced to actually be, and being is about embodiment, embodying ourselves, not just living in our heads, but living in the temple of the body. So I feel that there's a huge opportunity for transformation and re-evaluating and doing and resetting our relationship with the earth, with life, with each other, with our bodies. And a lot of us are very excited about this possibility and this great awakening that is upon us. And I also want to hold in this space of possibility and excitement for change also those who are suffering greatly, those who are suffering from disease and illness caused by the virus or other illnesses, and those who have lost loved ones who they couldn't be with in this pandemic, and those who are in absolute poverty. You know, we say we're all in this together, but we're not in this together equally. You know, I live in Southern California, and around me there are people who are quite well off, and the experience of the pandemic is quite different for them than for those who are living on the streets of Los Angeles, and one of the richest countries in the world. So I want to hold in our circle the people who are suffering, and invite us to open to compassion. Compassion means to suffer with, the literal meaning of compassion. And I think that's how I want to end this part of the sharing.
Thank you. That's so profound. That place of really remembering to honor the temple of this body and to bring ourselves fully here, to find that blend of spirit and matter that you so eloquently talked about. And also the compassion of holding that there's, part of the complexity is that for some people, this is like an extended retreat. And for some people, this is horror, like so much more challenging than anything else. And so, I know that it's, our temptation sometimes is to say, oh, I can't hold that, so I'm going to push it over here. And what we're inviting is the circle, is for us to be able to hold everyone, everywhere. And that takes practice. It really takes practice to do this. So let's just take a moment. We're going to open up to questions, and we're also going to just do a little bit of a popcorn. We're going to run an experiment. So can we share the view of everyone for a minute? So you all can see all of the panelists in their glory. Yeah. So I want to open up. We're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to just open to anything that got stirred for any of you in the audience as well as here. And then to close, I want to share a couple things, and I might ask you all to do this as well. So what got stirred up for audience as well as for anyone here? Go. And I'd love to hear from you too, Sabinije, about what's stirred for you as well as our host goddess.
I think there's been such an amazing sharing, and each and one of you really come from your own perspective, but still the unifying core is well, we started off with nearly the feelings that we find are a bit complicated for us on an individual level and a collective level to tune into, and how important it is to have a sense of community where those feelings of rage or anger, that we don't need to contain it in our container, how we can actually release, which many of you expressed, is feeling that sacred space of a community and that safeness of being held in a container to allow these feelings also to surface. Because when we allow that, we can also tap into the other end of the spectrum that we, of course, are talking about, which is love, compassion, and unity. And at the same time, you know, that the feminine is sacred and the masculine is sacred. It's all about the balance all the time. And I also appreciate so much mentioning, you know, that our body is our temple. And when we're disconnected to nature, it's also a reflection that we're so disconnected to our body. So those were some of the insights that I took. There were so many pieces of wisdom, and I was going to see if there were any questions. I noticed there was one, Kirsty Avon, who's asking, how does science and cognition find a place of balance between the warrior and the goddess? So I leave that to you, HeatherAsh.
Yeah, and I want to also start with, because there's another question about why is it always masculine, feminine? I personally do not use masculine, feminine because of some people don't relate to those at all. And also we tend to split masculine means male, feminine means female. So that's why I made the choice of going with warrior goddess. But I'd say for all of us that we get to really play with what are the qualities that we're working with. So you may not relate with warrior goddess at all or masculine, feminine. What are the two qualities that you're working to bring together? And, you know, science is so important, of bringing in the science that's part of I believe, the warrior and the goddess energy, because science is about looking at what's the information, what's the statistics, what do things look like. But if you look at almost all big scientists, how did they get to their breakthroughs? In the shower, while they were hiking, in a dream. And that's the goddess and that opening. So it weaves in for all. Anybody else want to share answers to questions? I know I can see you guys are looking at some of the questions, so jump in.
Well, to kind of tag on that, HeatherAsh, thinking about like the goddess energy of curiosity. Like when I think about science and I think about wonder, like I think about how with science comes curiosity. Like I wonder how this will work. And when we run experiments, like to me, that's the goddess energy of curiosity, of opening to what's possible. And having the warrior perseverance and persistence to keep going even when things fail, and like to try again, and to have those aspects. And I feel like a lot of what's happening right now is that place of holding, hey, look, we tried it this way. Oh, guess what? It didn't work. Let's try it this way. Oh, look, that didn't work. And it can be kind of confusing because as people in community, we're looking for answers, right? And so many things are uncertain right now. So they're like, we have to make things certain. But I think that if we bring in the scientific aspects of curiosity and openness to what's possible, we could get to play there a little bit more in a creative way.
And to add on to what Serena just said, it gives us a library of knowledge, so to speak, an experience that we can start relating with, and determining what is the best experience and what's the next best experience that we build, and how do we continue doing that, knowing that we're staying in the moment, experiencing what we're experiencing, gathering data, and then just determining that maybe that next outcome is nothing like what we had thought it would be.
Beautiful.
Beth had asked me about decision making and how you make decisions, because I talked about we have to make actual decisions, not just set intentions, and we actually have to take action. And the answer to that is, it's complicated, and it has to do with your personal energetics. I utilize a method called human design in my work, and so it's based off your authority. But in essence, what it is actually like listening to your personal mechanical compass. Like, it's truly energetic it's mechanics of energy. It's like you get the stuff, you feel the thing, you do the thing, or you think the thing, you do the thing. And that we don't second guess that. But it really depends on what your authority is. It would be how I would suggest you looking into that. So it's an easy to Google resource. So if you're looking for that, you can look up your human design chart, and that kind of helps you make how you choose to make decisions.
Beautiful. And that's something that I've been really thinking about, and I'd love to hear from some of the other women, is that we need to amplify and make space for women of color. Please look at these panelists. For those of you that are saying, where are the women of color? Look at these women. Hello. So
I feel like I'm a woman of color for sure.
absolutely. I mean,
All colors.
Makenna and I are the oddballs. Yay. Okay, so yeah. So yes, I totally agree with you, which is why I pulled these women together, because they are representing very beautiful colors from all over the world. So intuition. Where we are right now, what I believe is that we need to take the science in for sure, and the information, and every decision we make right now, we need to come back into ourselves. Every moment. Do I go into that grocery store? Yes or no, sweetheart? What action do I take next? What's my role? And this place of prayer that Serena mentioned, and basically everyone, but Banafshe as well, is this place of, we need to be more in prayer all the time. And that prayer is, help guide me, help guide me, help guide me. What's my next step? What's my action? How do we learn to deeply listen? We're so used to filling in our minds with noise. We have to get quiet. We have to get quiet so that we can listen for what's next.
I got a question from Dr. Betty Uribe. Can you expand on your Vipassana silent meditation retreat, how you have incorporated it into your life? I think that's such a great question, especially because I have 2 little ones now. And so meditation seems very out of the reach, although I do try to practice whenever I can. And I'll tie it into the role of intent, the question above it from Crystal, how does the role of intent impact whichever dualities we manage? I really found that being in that silent space for 10 days and being in my body, the embodiment, and just really being with all the sensations coming up in my body and not running away from it, not finding any distractions, and just, and sort of just being in touch with my own thoughts, unprocessed stuff coming up, which is what happens. It's like a detox, and all the stuff starts coming up. You reach a place of just inner silence and truth. And I remember when I was in that space of just not even having a single thought or word inside of me. I think it was like day 8 when I kind of felt that. That's when I realized that our intention is everything. I saw how our intention, the power of our intention, moves through people to make something happen. So a mother's love for her child, even if her child's away, college or wherever, just her love can move through people. The energy can move through people to reach her child, and getting what the child needs. And that's kind of how, you know, that's how powerful our intention is. And so I would say now, in terms of meditation, mindfulness practice every day, it's in my actions that I try to bring breath and presence, and trying to bring and just trying to stay in that prayerful mode that HeatherAsh was talking about. And the more I can do that, the more I can just be present to all this unprocessed stuff that's still coming up, especially because of the pandemic that we're in, and kind of just using every day as like healing and detox, and just, yeah, and healing my separation. I mean, I once asked a mentor earlier this year, what's your goal for this year? And she's like, oh, my goal is to heal the separation and my connections. And I'm like, how can that be someone's goal? And then it just hit me as being so profound. And I was like, wow, maybe I can just use that as my daily practice or metric or goal. And I think mindfulness and meditation does help with that.
Beautiful. Ashe, do you want to share? There's a lot of questions coming your way.
You know, I'm looking at all of them.
Yeah. Where do you start?
Where to start? I'll just continue from what Sarika was saying about this idea of separation. I mean, we're all separated from each other, yet we're coming together in new ways. And what has the opportunity that we've been given is to come into circle with people we would have never had this not happened. And, you know, I was just hearing about how Germany and France are coming together to support the citizens of the EU, something that they never thought would happen. And all of these have been the gifts of the pandemic. And one of the questions here is what I was saying is that we are saying that this is such a great opportunity for us. And this is for those of us who have the luxury to look at it as an opportunity, obviously. And how can each and every one of us really roll up our sleeves? I don't have sleeves, but, you know, sense our power to actually help in ways that we didn't think before we could. Those who don't have the luxury and the chance to look at what's in front of us as awakening, as opportunity. And these are people, you know, billions of people who live in poverty. How can we help them? How can we, you know, create a situation where, you know, most of us listening right now, most of us on this call can ask the question of where the products that I'm using and the processes that I support, are they sustainable? Are they part of establishing a connection with nature that honors animals, honors nature, honors bodies, and is healthy? We have the luxury of asking those questions. What products are we buying that have been created through sustainable means, that haven't been created because of child slave labor, because, you know, or animal cruelty? We can have those choices. But what about those who don't have those choices? What about people who live in poverty and can't ask those questions? How can we, as people who have that kind of luxury, address these questions, address these issues? And part of that comes from sensing our oneness, that what hurts and what affects one part of this organism that we're all a part of affects all of us, affects all of us. And this pandemic is showing that to us, that we really need each other. We really need each other. We're all in this together, but unfortunately not equally. So how can we as women who have that, and men who can access compassion as the core of our being, how can we live that compassion? How can we live what is in front of us? It starts with embodiment. To me, it starts with, in our bodies, in our beings, shifting to that change that is being asked to shift to, which is to sense ourselves as part of something way bigger. And how can this one individual contribute? And we each have the power. We each have the power to expand the greater in ways that are beyond our even wildest imagination. And we have this window of opportunity, as all the people in the opening session spoke, these wonderful women and men, the window of opportunity that we have right now before things get to be too late for humanity, not for the earth. She will last, she will survive, she always has, but for us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I want to just propose a couple things. One is, when we talked about this a bit, but I want to bring it into experience with everyone, which is, what do you feel vulnerable about? If everyone can just chat for a moment about, and let yourself feel what you feel vulnerable about right now. We're going to then talk about where we want to go. But what do you feel vulnerable about? And maybe some of the panelists can just share as well. What do you feel vulnerable about right now? That I'm part of the problem. Yeah. So what do you feel vulnerable about right now? Just go ahead and share it on the chat. And then any of the panelists, just let yourself feel this for a second. Finances. Yeah, making mistakes when I step into my leadership power, about my friends being so far away. All this comprehension that we're sharing here, the feeling of being out of control, owning my impact on the earth, coming out in my local community to hold circles. Beautiful, that I will never change, that I'll never ask for help and connect with women like you, just being, death of my loved ones dying, our sense of times changing, corruption, finding my true self all the years of abuse. So just take a moment, let's just take a moment and be with each other in our vulnerability. So you can read the chat, I'll share a couple of them, but that just to really honor that as humans, one of the ways that we connect to our oneness is we honor that we're all vulnerable and that we all have fear. And it doesn't mean we have to drown ourselves in the fear, but I believe we do need to name it, to just name it and let ourselves feel it. So everyone just take a breath and just feel that sense of fragility, of vulnerability. Yeah. Impotence, stepping forward and creating. As I'm in transition, what's the next highest path? The uncertainty of the future that I used to be so certain about. And isn't that what we're all really struggling, is the illusion we had of certainty? Because it was an illusion before. The illusion that we had control, it was an illusion before, but now we're really realizing what an illusion it was. And there's this gift now of getting to step in and hold ourselves in our vulnerability and really witness each other in our vulnerability as well. That will connect us. Yeah. And then here's the next piece. So this is from, okay, perfect. This is from Mindy Odlin. So she wrote a book called What If Up? And we're going to play this game. So the game is, yeah, it's a good game. The game is, what we often do is we look at worst case scenario, what I call disaster mind. And our minds go into this whole spin of what if it gets worse? What if I get sick? What if my beloveds get sick? And, what if the world comes to an end tomorrow? Ooh. So disaster mind can be helpful to just, like what I like to do with disaster mind is I'll run through worst case scenario and I'll give myself one time to do that. And then I'll come back into the present and go, okay, what am I going to do now? There's something that I want to share with you, which is this idea of what if everything gets better? What do you want to vision? What's your highest vision? And I'd love each of the panelists to just share really briefly, what's your vision of what's next? What if up? What if this pandemic is what allows us to finally bring compassion in and to break down all the barriers that we've created with humans? I'll just start throwing things out, and panelists, play with me. And you guys, if in the audience, go ahead and write as well. What if
I'm dreaming into what if our communities come together, like on land, in places together, around a campfire, or like, and having dialogues like this, even if we're spread far apart, but to build like big touches in nature and getting back into relationship with land and what that's like.
And what if everybody, all the governments decided that they were going to stop war and take all the resources that are going into war and put it towards nature, put it towards creating more equal conditions, create it towards health.
What if we experience life as sacred, and our relationships as sacred, our bodies as sacred, and put life in the middle as the forefront and not money, all of us.
Yeah. Beautiful.
What if everyone on Earth was able to release the stories that they've taken on as truth and see actual truth?
What if women and men could just love and adore each other and co-create a new planet out of sacred love?
What if we disassociated with our fears and allowed ourselves to rebuild societal structures that support all of humanity and animals and nature and our planet to really come from a place of love and compassion for each other and ourselves?
What if we had the relationships to know our neighbors, to get to know the people that live across from us or next to us, and be in community with them?
Yeah, there's some beautiful ones. What if selfishness was replaced with compassion? What if there was no barrier to race, religion, and everyone can show compassion to each other? What if we all begin living in heart-centered gratitude? Yeah. So this place of visioning is really important, and to be around people, to put yourself around people that can vision huge. That's why I love hanging out with Jim and with all of these women, because we need to keep stretching ourselves of what's possible. And the way to do that is to be around other people that are stretching. And so I just really want to honor Humanity Rising and what's happening here, and to stay tuned and to keep getting your mind stretched open, because that's what we need. And that as we vision possibilities, as Makenna said, that we also then bring it down to, and what's my next action? And what's my next action? And what's my next action? And that we're in that place of opening to the highest vision, and then coming back to, and what am I going to do? What's my piece? How do I do that in this moment? So it's this and this, over and over and over again. Exactly. Fly. So beautiful what Lynn says the other day. There's my alarm. So we're going to do a brief closing ritual ceremony, and I would love, we had talked about lighting candles. And so what I want to do is, and if you don't, it's fine, is for everyone to imagine that you have a candle right now. So imagine that you have a candle. There's a couple physical candles here, which is beautiful. And that we're all lighting this candle together with the intent of owning our vulnerabilities as part of the process of transformation and visioning what's possible. And imagine all of us around the world lighting this candle with the intent of growing our own compassion, growing our own centeredness, growing our own capacity. And that we do this day by day, moment by moment, that we make this our practice, rather that's something that's in the future. That we dedicate our life to bringing the sacred into everything, nature, humans, all of creation. We open our heart to being in this place of mystery and listening for next steps, staying connected to each other, bringing everybody in to this conversation. Now I want to open to two more of the panelists, and you all can self-select. I'm just sharing a minute of prayer. We've got time for about 2, and then we will close together. So whoever feels called, unmute.
Maybe I'll share. May I be happy, may I be peace, may I be free from suffering. May my loved ones be happy, may my loved ones be peace, may my loved ones be free from suffering. May all beings be happy, may all beings be peace, may all beings be free from suffering.
May my question always be, how may I serve and give to others? How may I love? How can my words be salve for others? And how can my light help ignite fire within others?
در این خاک، در این خاک، در این مزرعه پاک، به جز عشق، به جز مهر، دیگر تخم مکاری. These are the Persian words from a poem by Rumi inviting us to plant love, plant kindness in this field, in this land, in this immaculate field of the body. Let's not plant anything but kindness. Let's not plant anything but love. And may this kindness and love that we plant bear fruit for generations to come.
Blessings. Thank you so much, beautiful beloveds, for being part of the panel, and to all of you that have joined. Much, much gratitude. And I'll pass it back to Sabinije to close for us. Gratitude.
Thank you so much, HeatherAsh, and thank you so much to each and every one of you, amazing, beautiful women, and all that you shared. I mean, it's so soothing and touching, and you can also see with all the people who are viewing that they go straight to their hearts, and it really is not always what we say, it's how we make people feel, and just feeling the energy of the conversations and the wisdom and the love and the compassion and the insights that you've shared is truly, truly in gratitude and in bliss. And just to maybe summarize a few of the thought trails that were is to create grace and compassion, also in our leadership. And in the beginning, we talked also about leadership in the workplace. And one of the things that I saw that the audience sort of tapped into was maybe we need, workplace shamans. And that might be an offspring from Humanity Rising and all the knowledge that is coming out. And then learning how to shift fear into respect from a creative place. And also, of course, the mode of communication through stillness, silence, and dance, as Banashe so eloquently shared, and to remember that our body is truly our temple. And the art of practicing vulnerability, and vulnerability within ourselves, but also vulnerability with others, because that is when we unify as well, and that love and connection really happens. And to quote HeatherAsh, because I know we've been talking about the warrior and the goddess energy, and I know that she said that it's, we can reclaim the fierce love of the warrior and embody the wisdom of the goddess to bring balance and harmony to earth. And I just wanted to share a little prayer too from one of my favorite books. It's called Soul Awakening Practice, and they have a soul awakening prayer, which is very, very simple. And it's the words: soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, peace radiating. And with that, thank you so much to all of you. And I hand over to Jim.
Thank you, Sabinije. Thank you, HeatherAsh, and thank you, panel. I'm profoundly moved by the depth to which you've explored your own interiors today. And I love this notion of workplace shamans. I think the history has come to the point where it's high time every company and every organization should adopt and hire a workplace shaman. Because what a shaman is the shaman in the indigenous peoples and in the ancient peoples was the one person who spoke both the language of nature and the language of society. And he or she was the person who translated back and forth those two languages and ensured that the tribes were maintaining alignment with the natural mysteries. And it's been a tragedy that function in our society has been lost. There's many scientists who are beginning to reclaim that voice, speaking more and more urgently to the critical need for us to realign with the laws of nature. But that's a very powerful suggestion, and I appreciate it. And once again, the depth to which this circle has gone into the interior of the psyche, where not only goddess and warrior, but all the archetypal forms are present. And how we navigate through all the nuances is really a high art form that requires us to be completely embodied, not only in our own bodies, but in our own hearts, in our own souls, in our own minds, and in each other. This is a collective enterprise. And so I want to acknowledge and reverence what's been done. And to make two just final comments before we close. One is that tomorrow, we in some ways go to our opposite with Shelley Ostroff, who's the co-founder of Together in Creation, who has a passion for whole system design and looking at the whole system health of the planet, within which human beings are a constitutive part. Today, we've looked from the inside out in many ways. And tomorrow, we're going to look from the outside in, an equally important vector of perception. And so that will will mark our next Women's Circle. Again, same time as today, between 5 and 7 p.m. Central European Time. And that leads me to the second closing comment. And that is that 2 hours is only enough to just touch the beach of the vast ocean. It doesn't really get us into the ocean itself. So I want to encourage everyone to, because you're all registered on the Ubiverse, you all are either have your profiles, you're all members of the Humanity Rising group. So if you go onto the Ubiverse, our platform, and click on Humanity Rising, there's a place where we can share whatever additional ideas that you might come up with. I'd love to see a thread around shamanism in contemporary society, the different facets of warrior and goddess as women take the lead in more and more areas around the world. And so just make yourself comfortable and welcome on the Ubiverse, which is sort of the home ground, the common ground of Humanity Rising. So thank you. And just to reiterate, every day from here on out, as long as the pandemic unfolds and you want to partake in conversations like we've partaken in today, just click on humanityrising.solutions and you can get to the dialogue of that particular day. So thank you, everyone. Warm welcome to all of you, and we'll see you same time, same station tomorrow.